Baby steps.
After your faith has let you down.
This is Infants on Thrones.
I'm looking for the further light and knowledge Father promised to send me.
Baby steps. Baby steps.
Look for the good in everyone.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Osland, a licensed therapist and certified life coach. And over the 13-year history of this podcast, we've shared a lot of listener essays, stories, reflections, and deeply personal explorations from you, the audience. And I've decided it's time to bring some of those voices back to life. Even though today is an all-new listener essay, thank you very much, Reed. You are the one who introduced me to Notebook LM, so this AI puppet show thing is partially your fault. To dust them off and, well, resurrect them. We'll call it the morning of the first resurrection. After all, resurrection is really about healing, restoring the body, mind, and soul to their most pristine, integrated state. So I thought, what if we could use modern tools like ChatGPT and Notebook LM to create a kind of AI puppet show? A thoughtful, playful deep dive into the mental health layers underneath these listener essays. Now, I'm creating this series for two audiences, primarily. First, for students studying for the National Counselor exam to help you explore these stories as real-world case studies. And second, for anyone who's ever wrestled with similar experiences to help you see the psychological and emotional insights that might apply to your own life. So, it's my pleasure to share these resurrected essays with you, renewed, reimagined, and ready for reflection. All right? Are you ready? Hold on to your hats and glasses.
Cause this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness.
Hey Glenn, how's it going? It is Thanksgiving Eve, so hopefully you have everything lined up for tomorrow. I thought I'd write something, which I don't usually do, and it was very cathartic for me to write this. In fact, after I wrote it, I could let go of some things that were bothering me, not pertaining to this essay, but for some reason just writing it was very helpful. But it's a listener essay since you've been doing that, and I thought there's some things on my mind that I thought I'd share. All right. Glenn, I've enjoyed listening to the listener essays of yesteryear followed by the AI analysis. It's pretty amazing stuff to hear artificial intelligence render an analysis better than I could possibly do after 20 years of study. To listen to these personal stories is wholly relatable and cathartic to listen to. So I'd like to do something unique in that this essay is not about my journey out of the church. It's just that I find myself in the struggle of the journey outside of being ex-Mormon. My baptism into becoming an ex-Mormon shook the foundations of my adult life. But the thing about becoming an ex-Mormon is you hardly know what's happened. You just slowly dissolve into it, like it's like a fading picture of Marty McFly's siblings in Back to the Future. So how do you know you've dissolved into being an ex-Mormon? So I wrote some examples, a la Jeff Foxworthy ways of describing it, and some of these may be autobiographical. All right, here we go. If you still subscribe to Ex-Mormon content on your podcast feed, but on a near daily basis mark them as played when they pop up so they are removed from your feed, but you don't have the guts to unsubscribe, you may be an ex-Mormon. If you have tried to kill your monthly donation to Radio Free Mormon a couple times, but discovered that it isn't easy at all in the end, so you justify in your head why it's a good idea to keep your $10 a month contribution going, you may be an ex-Mormon. If your son starts bad-mouthing and disparaging the church, and you find yourself defending the church and telling him how grateful you are for being raised in it, you may be an ex-Mormon. If you miss believing in magic and even long for a belief in magical things, for the belief that there is a higher power at play, that if only you could tap into, all your wishes and dreams could come true, but there's just no way in hell you can get yourself to believe in that shit again, you may be an ex-Mormon. If you show up to the occasional beer night at the local Mexican restaurant with the local Exmos you organized yourself some years ago, and tire of hearing the conversation about just how crazy and stupid the church is, you may be an ex-Mormon. If you have recently tried channeling the wisdom from alien worlds, you may be an ex-Mormon. Just kidding, Glenn. I kind of think of ex-Mormonism, if there is such a term, is just another extension of the ex-Mormon path we take that leads to becoming even more of an individual. And this is scary. We are wired to want community, to connect, to have status amongst our peers. And the church fed this need astonishingly well. To think I could move anywhere in this country and be met with people I really trusted on day one, it's quite amazing and something I'll probably forever miss. But being ex-Mormon is almost as much of an identification as being Mormon is, just without the secret handshakes and olive oil key chain dongles. It felt as obsessive, or perhaps even more so, than being Mormon was. It's the experience of sitting in the parking lot of your work, listening to an engrossing Mormon stories interview and wanting to call into work just so you can finish it. Being ex-Mormon is being consumed with anger towards the church, then feeling guilty about being so angry and wanting to so badly move past it. Being ex-Mormon is trying to figure out how you can still love friends and close family members who are still very much engrossed in the church. For me, ex-Mormon is trying desperately to still have a relationship with my parents, but trying to overlook how they would love to see me fail in life, because it would prove that God is as vengeful as he says he is in the scriptures, and thus the church is true. Plus, by losing it all, it may just bring me back into the sacred fold. Being ex-Mormon allowed me to sit and listen to people I normally wouldn't have, to listen to their exit stories, relate to their heartaches, and wallow in the struggle of trying to see the church in a nuanced way when all you want to do is hate it. You see, the listeners of this podcast know very well what it's like to be Mormon, but we all had a unique Mormon experience to some degree. Our ex-Mormon experiences are also divergent and unique. Thankfully, this podcast, Infants on Thrones, was a huge part of my ex-Mormon experience. I undertook a series of life coaching by you, Glenn, live, on air, bearing it all, and you had me studying very hard, things I normally wouldn't have read. I tried new things like meditation. On the last coaching session, I realized that I became good with Jesus. It was just like Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump. I'd been out yelling at God all night in a storm, only to finally see Jesus for what he really is. And I'm not talking about a person who saved me from my sins, but the Buddha kind of Jesus, the hippie kind. I started looking at him as the person who accomplished something I've never seen anyone do. He loved people no matter what tribe they were in. He was at his core anti-tribal. That was his miracle. Nothing magical, although it sounds like he was probably a pretty kick-ass magician too. So it's now been over 6 years since my faith fell apart and delivered me into ex-Mormonism. What I didn't realize was just what sort of identity ex-Mormonism was and is, but it was an exhilarating time. A time of discovering all the new things Mormonism kept from me all those years. I consumed ex-Mormon podcasts like a depraved heroin addict. I started cussing because it was hilarious to say the magic syllables that were always so forbidden. The word fuck is now the most sacred word in my vocabulary, only to be used at most once a month on a sacred and deserving occasion, because for me, Saying the mother of all cuss words sends a chill up my spine and a tingling sensation in my body like the Holy Ghost never could. I tried alcohol, found my boundaries there after messing up once or twice. It was a time of discovering a new world that lay hidden my whole life. It gave my marriage a whole new level of adventure and bonding we had never experienced before. But here's the sad truth about us humans. We tend to grow uninterested in things after a while. Once the element of surprise is missing, our interests begin to fade. As our species evolved, our brain's reward system, or the dopaminergic pathways, grew to respond strongly to unexpected outcomes. So if something is better than predicted, we get that wonderful dopamine spike. Our brains evolved to prioritize novelty as a survival mechanism because unexpected events could signal opportunities or threats. When something becomes predictable, that rewards response fades, driving our natural craving for new experiences. And this is why I think I can no longer listen to the hundreds of hours of Ex-Mormon content. It's simply not surprising anymore. There's no yummy brain chemicals in there for me. I can almost physically feel my brain closing up its Ex-Mormon shop, sweeping the floors for the last time, reminiscing of the good times we had and all the customers who had come through as we shared our lives together, cried together, bared our souls to one another. But those customers aren't coming around anymore. They've moved on, and so must I. But Ex-Mormonism will always be with me. It's still where I found my closest and most authentic friends. It gave me you, Glenn, for crying out loud. A couple weeks ago, you sent me 30 minutes of you playing and singing on the guitar in front of the campfire in your backyard, and it was crazy kind of you. You gave me Kurt and Jess and Sabrina and Brendan and Ren. What experience we shared together in group coaching, I'll never forget. But just like with Mormonism, I'm fearful of my exit from ex-Mormonism, just not to the same degree, because my eternal salvation isn't on the line this time. Will there be anything nearly as exhilarating ahead that will reward my dopaminergic pathways as much as ex-Mormonism and its surprises and discoveries awaiting behind every corner? So where do I go from here without ex-Mormonism being an all-consuming stage in my life? Will I be losing the only party trick that I've ever had at being ex-Mormon and seeing jaws drop around me as I explained that the only reason I was nice to my coworkers was because I thought they'd want to convert to Mormonism if they saw what a great guy I was, or their wide eyes as I explained the whole temple ceremony to them with all the signs and tokens and throat slashings. What can I say? They were fun times. So what does the future hold for this ex-Mormonism? I guess my exit from ex-Mormonism is just to be just like the ending of Toy Story 2. You know, when Buzz and Woody and friends are falling towards their death and destruction in the burning incinerator, and we watch as they realize their frantic efforts to escape their deaths will be pointless. The end is coming no matter how hard they try to fight it. One by one, we see them silently stop struggling against gravity's pull towards death. And what do? They look deep into each other's eyes, and they reach out, and they hold on to each other. They consciously form a circle of love. No words are spoken, not even goodbyes. They just hold each other heading towards the end. This is what I want ex-Mormonism to be. I think I just want to hold my family's hands towards the dark unknown. My kids, my amazing wife, even my parents and siblings in very Mormon hands. No more words, no more judgments, just presence. So I accept what used to be the unacceptable. Because as I said when I first met you, Glenn, so many years ago, we can only discover the unknown by allowing the known an honorable death.
That was a great new listener essay from Infants on Thrones. Newly created, summarily executed, and then immediately resurrected on the first morning of Thanksgiving Eve or something like that.
And what a perfect offering for this time of year.
Yeah.
You know, when you think about gratitude, especially around the holidays, we usually focus on, well, what we have now.
Right, the stuff we can count.
Exactly. But this essay it's a beautiful guide to feeling a kind of quiet gratitude for what you've outgrown, for what's just fallen away.
That feeling of quiet, necessary dissolution, that's exactly what we need to get into today. So our mission for this deep dive is to take this listener's whole journey. I mean, it's witty, it's so honest about his faith transition, community burnout, just aging, and use it as a kind of case study for this idea we're calling the perfection of unfolding. It's really a deep dive into how identity fades right on schedule, how grief can actually be a sign of healing, and how presence, this idea of just being here, emerges from all of it.
And that whole deep dive really hinges on how we define one word, perfection. And we have to just, right at the top, set aside the usual definition, the striving, the moral report card, that feeling that you're never quite good enough.
Yeah, that's not it.
That is not it. We are talking about perfection in more of a philosophical or psychological sense. Perfection as inevitability.
Okay, when you say that inevitability, it changes the whole story. It reframes the whole idea of struggle, doesn't it?
It does.
Because if we accept that, it means that whatever is happening in your life right now, the confusion, the contradictions, even the peace, it had to be exactly what it is, given all the pieces.
Given all the variables.
Yes.
It's an act of profound acceptance. And this listener's experience of sort of quietly maturing beyond not one but two communities, it's a perfect illustration of what some thinkers have been saying for centuries.
Right. They're inviting us to stop fighting the moment and just look at its shape.
To just observe its necessary shape, yeah.
So who should we start with? I'm thinking of the American psychologist James Hillman.
Oh, absolutely. For anyone who isn't familiar, Hillman was a major figure in developing what's called archetypal psychology. He was really focused on shifting psychology away from just behaviors and, symptoms.
Right.
And back toward depth and meaning and the soul, the myths that live inside us.
And his big insight that just fits so perfectly here is that line, each person's fate is that person's true self.
And that can sound a little deterministic, but he's not talking about some rigid pre-written script.
No.
He's saying that this specific, unique path you have walked with, all its struggles, all its gifts, all its wounds, that is the destiny that reveals your unique soul. The person who wrote this essay isn't a detour from the plan. He's the plan unfolding.
And that idea just echoes everywhere, doesn't it? Across so many wisdom traditions. You see it in basic Buddhist philosophy. The nature of everything is the way it is. Just full stop.
No cosmic mistake, no error message. That we can get even more specific with the Japanese Zen philosopher, Dogen.
Okay, so Dogen, for context, was this incredibly important figure in the 13th century who founded the school of Zen in Japan.
And his whole thing was radical. He said, practice is enlightenment. You aren't practicing to get somewhere. You are already there in the very act of practicing.
So this idea of this concept of suchness, that things are perfect just by being what they are, that really hits home. The mountains aren't, trying to be better mountains.
Precisely. And that's his famous line. The blue mountains are the way the blue mountains walk. Just think about the mountains in this listener's life. The huge, towering struggle of a faith crisis.
Yeah.
The solid ground of being a parent. The difficult terrain of just getting older. None of those things are trying to be anything other than what they are. Their perfection, their suchness is built in. So when the listener feels that quiet relief of outgrowing an old identity.
That's the blue mountain walking.
That's the blue mountain walking.
Yeah.
It's the inevitable movement of growth itself.
This philosophical acceptance gives us a model then, a kind of formula for this deep dive that the listener is, maybe without realizing it, laying out for us. We're calling it the formula of perfection, X plus Y equals Z.
And we should spend a minute on these inputs because they are so personal for everyone. So X. X is your entire inner world.
Everything inside.
Everything. Your history, your genetics, your emotional wounds, your specific sense of humor, and really critically, your unique neurobiology, how your brain is actually wired for safety and connection.
Okay. And then Y is the outside world, the pressure cooker.
Right. Your environment, your culture, the family you're in, your actual physical age, the specific challenges you're facing on any given day, like, say, writing an essay on Thanksgiving Eve.
And Z is what comes out, the result. It's this moment's perfect expression. It's the shape that emerges when your insides meet your outsides.
And the contradictions, the exhaustion, the big insights, all of it. Yeah. All of it is Z.
And this is the key thing for you if you're listening right now. Z, that perfection, is the inevitable shape that emerges. It's never about the absence of pain or confusion. If you're struggling right now, Z is the perfectly accurate shape of that struggle.
Exactly. And if you're laughing, Z is the perfectly accurate shape of that relief. Accepting that means you can stop spending so much energy judging the moment as a failure or a success. It's just accurate.
Okay, let's unpack this with the listener's actual experience. He talks about becoming an ex-Mormon, and he uses this incredible visual.
Yeah, Back to the Future photo.
Yeah, like the fading picture of Marty McFly's siblings. It's not a big, dramatic explosion. It's a quiet evaporation.
And that image is so powerful because it separates the two big transitions. The first one, leaving his faith, that had to be loud. It was aggressive, defensive. It took so much conscious energy.
Right.
But this second transition, the fading of the ex-Mormon identity, that's a sign of integration. It's subtle. You often don't even notice it until you look back at the photo and realize, oh, half the people are gone.
Yeah. So let's apply our formula X plus Y will equal Z to this quiet fading. What are the internal inputs that are making this happen? Because it's not passive, it's a developmental process.
It's totally developmental. On the X side, the inner world, what we're seeing is this deep, sustained neurological shift. His brain is literally reprioritizing its resources.
Okay.
So those really strong emotional links that once tied him to that old identity, the anger, the need to defend himself, the loyalty to the new tribe, they're just being dissolved. The neural pathways that used to light up when he thought about being an ex-Mormon are now conserving energy. The whole operating system has changed.
Yeah.
It doesn't need that defense program running in the background anymore.
And the Y side, the changing environment, that just reinforces it all so smoothly, it feels inevitable.
Absolutely. As you get older, your priorities just shift. Parenting, your career, real self-discovery.
Yeah.
These external demands just push those old identity-based conversations further and further away.
You're getting fewer prompts from the world to even play that role.
Exactly. When the world stops asking you to be the ex-Mormon in the room, your brain wisely starts to just archive that identity.
So the resulting Z, this felt sense of dissolving, is actually an act of self-optimization. Why is that fading such clear evidence of development?
Because the nervous system has moved past survival mode. That first exit, the high-energy one, that's a battle for your own survival and safety. But once you've established those new boundaries and you're securely outside the old system, your whole system can just relax.
Right.
All those resources that were tied up in defending that identity are now free. The system has graduated from defining itself against something to just defining itself as something. It's whole.
It's like a butterfly finally shedding the chrysalis. The shell was essential, but seeing it crumple away is proof that the creature inside is ready to fly.
It is a sign of supreme health. The identity did its job, and now the soul is just too big for that old container.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit to the humor in the essay, what we're calling the Jeff Foxworthy section. The listener is laughing at himself, at his own contradictions.
Yeah, trying to cancel an old monthly donation to the church, while in the next breath defending the church to his son. It's so honest.
Or missing the magic of belief, but absolutely refusing to believe in, as he puts it, that shit ever again.
So in traditional psychology, we might see that and label it cognitive dissonance or, internal conflict.
Right, like something's wrong.
Like it's an error in the system. But in our X plus Y is Z framework, these contradictions are not flaws. They are evidence of a magnificent, complex system finding its next higher state of balance.
So Z is just accurately reflecting all these complicated, conflicting inputs.
Perfectly. You've got the X input of, say, a deep, ingrained spiritual hunger, maybe a real love for his family history, the genuine emotional warmth he once felt.
Even if the beliefs are gone.
Even if the content is discarded. And then you have the Y input, his intellectual integrity, his awareness of institutional harm, a deep commitment to critical thinking. The resulting Z is a person who holds both the longing and the refusal at the same time. That's not hypocrisy. It's a necessary temporary balance that lets the system handle all that tension without just breaking.
And the tool he uses, the mechanism that lets him hold it all, is humor. So how does humor work here as this perfect adaptive response?
Humor is a neurobiological superpower. I mean, we really have to look at this through the lens of polyvagal theory.
Developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It's basically the science of how our nervous system scans for safety and danger.
Right, how we move between states of calm and states of defense. So let's imagine the listener in that moment. He's defending an institution he left. That's a huge contradiction.
That's gotta feel weird.
His system could easily register that as a threat. It could pull him into a sympathetic state that's fight or flight. He might feel irritated, anxious, defensive.
Or the opposite.
Or, if it feels totally overwhelming, he could dip into the dorsal vagal state. That's the shutdown freeze response. He might feel numb or just disconnected.
But the joke, the ability to just see how absurd it all is, that changes the whole chemical landscape of his brain in an instant.
It does. A genuine laugh, especially at yourself, activates the ventral vagal system. This is the newest, most sophisticated part of our nervous system. It's all about social engagement, safety, and calm. Humor is the ultimate signal of safety.
You're telling your own brain.
You are literally telling your brain, this is complex, this is intense, but I'm not dying. In fact, I am so safe that I can metabolize this stress through play.
So the humor is the perfect Z that emerges when that ventral vagal energy takes back control. It transforms what could be a painful moment into one of clarity and connection.
It's cognitive alchemy.
Yeah.
It really is. It takes the pressure of that contradiction and turns it into insight. And that's why the essay is so powerful. It shows a nervous system working perfectly to stay balanced under a whole lot of stress.
Okay, let's go deeper into the emotional part, the line that just, it stops you in your tracks. I miss believing in magic, but there's just no way in hell I can get myself to believe in that shit again. That ache, that longing is so real.
Mm-hmm. And we have to be so careful with that ache because it's a complex Z. It's easy to misunderstand that longing and think it means you should go back.
Right.
People don't realize that the longing itself is actually a signal of forward momentum.
Okay, so let's break that down with X and Y. The X input, the inner world part of that ache, is more than just nostalgia, isn't it?
Oh, it's way more profound. We're talking about the spiritual residue left in the psyche. The Buddhists have a word for this.
Samskaras.
Samskaras. So not just memories, but deeper grooves.
Deeper grooves is a great way to put it. They're deeply ingrained mental impressions. Think of the neural pathways etched by years and years of ritual, community, and certainty. The listener's brain remembers the powerful feeling of being held by a huge cosmic story. It remembers the dopamine hits of having all the answers. And losing that whole cosmology, that whole map of the universe, leaves a void.
And the soul registers that void as the absence of magic.
Okay, so that explains the depth of the ache. But the Y input, the external conditions, they make going back impossible.
The Y input is intellectual integrity. It's the trauma he's processed, the critical thinking skills he's honed, his awareness of history. Those Y inputs create a firewall. His intellect says, I cannot believe the literal claims, while his soul is saying, but I still require wonder.
So what's the resulting Z? What's the transformation there?
The Z is the refusal to settle. That is the critical point. The longing itself is the magic. The tension is a signal that his inherent spiritual seeking, that part of him that demands enchantment, is refusing to settle for the simple, flat disenchantment that so often follows deconstruction.
So the seeking itself is the engine for growth.
It's the engine. His critical mind, the Y, is protecting his spiritual core, the X, from settling for old, easy answers. It's forcing him to create a new, more mature kind of magic, one that's based on presence, not on dogma.
The system is rejecting the small container and demanding a bigger cosmos.
That's a fundamentally perfect process.
And all that intense internal work, it naturally leads to a kind of fatigue with the outside world. He captures this so well when he says, if you show up at the local Ex-Mo beer night and you're tired of hearing how crazy the church is, you may be an ex-Mormon.
The novelty is gone. The energy is gone. And this is just a beautiful, practical example of applied neuroscience. This is all about dopamine habituation. It's the brain's way of saying, the party's over, but in a good way.
Let's get into the mechanics of that, the Ex-Mo dopamine cycle.
Okay, so when you first leave a high-demand group, every new piece of information, every secret you uncover, every shared story of outrage, every historical fact you learn, your brain sees that as novel and vital information.
And novelty means?
Novelty triggers a huge release of dopamine, and it feels fantastic. You're learning, you're bonding with your new tribe, you're validating a really painful choice you made. The brain's reward system is just firing on all cylinders.
That rush is why the first year or two after leaving can feel so almost manic.
Exactly, but the brain is incredibly efficient. So after a while, if you keep hearing the same stories, the same arguments, the same emotional loops of outrage and frustration, the information is no longer novel.
It's predictable.
It's predictable. And the brain performs what we call habituation. The dopamine release just drops off a cliff. Your brain essentially says, I know this script. I've got what I need. Engaging conservation mode.
So his fatigue at the beer night isn't really social burnout, it's neurochemical optimization.
It is the perfect Z of a system that has completed a learning cycle. It's a signal that the novelty of the counter story has worn off because the internal work is done. The brain is saying, I've learned the lessons from the survival stage. Rehashing it now is inefficient and frankly, it's draining.
The system is closing up the Ex-Mo shop.
It's maturity. It's your own biology compelling you to move on to deeper, quieter forms of meaning that aren't hooked on outrage or novelty.
And what's so fascinating is that it's that very optimization, that tiredness, that clears the path for the next big insight. You have to get tired of the us versus them story to find the universal we.
That's it.
Which leads us right to his profound reframing of Jesus. He says he's actually good with Jesus, the Buddha kind, the hippie kind. He loved people no matter what tribe they were in. He was anti-tribal. That was his miracle.
This is the highest developmental outcome of the whole journey he's described.
Yeah.
He's showing us what happens when you finally transcend tribal theology.
Right.
He's taking back this powerful symbol Jesus and stripping away centuries of punitive boundary-drawing dogma.
And the resulting Zia is Jesus as an archetype of just radical, non-tribal compassion.
Yes, and this connects directly to the mechanics of psychological and spiritual growth. Let's look at Carl Jung for a second.
Right. Jung, the founder of analytical psychology, his whole work was centered on this process of becoming a whole person, which he called individuation.
So how does this anti-tribal Jesus represent individuation? Well, individuation is all about integrating the conscious and the unconscious parts of yourself, making you whole and less dependent on what the group thinks.
Okay.
So the listener first had to consciously reject the old tribal definition of Jesus. But that archetypal energy, it doesn't just vanish. It goes into the unconscious. Now, through all this reflection and humor, his X and his life experience, his Y, he's retrieving the symbol.
He's pulling it back out.
And pulling it back out and integrating the parts of it that were buried under all the rules. The pure, ethical, revolutionary love.
He's freeing the symbol from the cage of doctrine and claiming it as his own universal wisdom.
He's moving from the persona, the mask he wore for the tribe, to the authentic self. And that self can now connect with other wisdom traditions. That's why he says the Buddha kind, the hippie kind. It's not exclusive anymore.
This sounds so much like the kind of mature spirituality that thinkers like Richard Rohr talk about.
It's exactly that. Rohr is so important here. He talks about moving into the second half of life spirituality.
Where the first half is all about the tribe.
Right. The first half is external. It's rule-based. You're trying to build your identity and find safety in a group. But the second half of life is internal. It's wisdom-based. It's universal. And it's marked by being able to just sit with complexity and paradox.
The listener saying Jesus was anti-tribal is like the very definition of that second half of life maturity.
The boundaries have dissolved. He's not looking for shelter in a specific group anymore. He's looking for ethical truth that applies to everyone, no matter what their dogma is. And that shift is the perfect, inevitable result of all those years sorting through it all.
But that journey, I mean, leaving your first tribe and then slowly, quietly leaving your second tribe, that has to come with a lot of grief. He talks about that pain of losing community.
That pain is so physical. It's not just an idea. We're biologically wired to connect with a group. So when those connections are lost, not once but twice, your nervous system registers that as a genuine survival threat. That's why the ache just sticks around.
But he calls it a perfect ache. How can something that feels so awful, so destabilizing, be perfect?
Because the intensity of the ache is the perfect Z that's emerging from his conditions. It's not a sign something went wrong. It's evidence that two things are profoundly right. First, that the community was real and it held him when he needed it. That's his X.
And second,
that he has now grown beyond what that container could offer. That's his Y. The ache that results is just his nervous system mourning something that was necessary, but is now outgrown.
So you're mourning the loss of the container, but at the same time, you're sort of celebrating the size of the person who broke out of it.
Exactly. This is so central to psychological growth, to move toward what we call secure attachment, being able to feel safe in yourself and form healthy, non-dependent relationships. You have to mourn the containers you outgrow. If you didn't feel that ache, it would be a sign of numbness. The perfect ache is the sound of his psyche being honest about reality.
And he's mourning two things. He's mourning the tribe that was supposed to save him, but he's also mourning outgrowing the tribe that did save him for a while.
It's the ultimate sign of individuation. The first tribe offers security, but it costs you yourself. The second tribe offers affirmation, but eventually it demands you conform to its own anti-dogma. The ache is a signal that he's rejecting all tribalism, even the comforting kind, in favor of his own authentic reality.
But the essay doesn't just leave us there in the pain. It pivots to what actually works, what heals. He mentions group coaching and then this beautiful little moment, 30 minutes of someone playing a guitar around a campfire.
And those moments are so profound because they show us the real mechanism of healing. It's co-regulation. This is the interpersonal, nonverbal version of our X plus Y equals Z formula. It's where healing happens not because of a belief, but because of safe, rhythmic proximity to another human being.
Okay, so break that down. Co-regulation. In that campfire moment, what is actually happening in the nervous systems of the people there?
Co-regulation is just the natural syncing up of our nervous systems to create a shared state of safety. We can't really regulate ourselves in a vacuum. We need a calm, stable external system, another person, to signal to our own system that it's safe to drop our defenses.
So let's apply the formula to that campfire.
Okay. The X input is the listener's vulnerability, his internal state of grief and searching. The Y input is the external environment of safety, the shared space, the openness, and that steady, soothing, nonverbal rhythm of the guitar. Rhythmic sound is a powerful ventral vagal activator. It's like a heartbeat or a lullaby.
And the Z that comes out of that is authentic connection, a feeling of being held that has nothing to do with theology or arguments.
It's the highest form of healing. Notice that the repair mechanism is completely separate from the belief mechanism. You don't have to agree on God to co-regulate. You just need shared vulnerability and the physical presence of safety. That 30 minutes of guitar was a powerful, nonverbal dose of safety, redirecting all that energy he was spending on fear back into connection and growth.
So the ache from losing community is perfect proof of growth. And the quiet comfort of the campfire is perfect proof of repair. The whole arc of healing is right there. So as he's watching this old identity dissolve, he asks this really human, really self-aware question. He's afraid. He says, will I be losing the only party trick I've ever had? The ex-Mormon stuff.
And that fear is so normal. Because for years, that story was his social currency. It was his ticket to connection. But if we could talk to him, we'd say, the identity is dissolving, but the internal qualities that made that story so powerful.
The vulnerability, the honesty, the wit.
The moral depth.
Yeah.
Those are the permanent X inputs. They don't fade away.
So the identity is just. It's dying an honorable death so that his core self can show up in a new way.
That is the perfection of outgrowing. Perfection is that moment when a useful identity, a shell, a party trick, becomes too small, too tight, and it just starts to fall away. That is exactly what is supposed to happen when a soul is growing. Losing the story is the prerequisite for finding a new, deeper meaning.
And he ends with this, just this masterful metaphor. The final scene from Toy Story 2, all the characters are falling toward the incinerator and they stop fighting. They reach for each other. And his final thought is, no words, just presence.
And that is the deepest Z. That's the final form of perfection. I mean, think about what that Toy Story moment means psychologically. It is total surrender to what is. It's the end of the ego's struggle to control things. And it's just grounded nonverbal intimacy.
The whole point of the entire journey from being in a tribe to finding your own coherence, it's all in that one image. Presence is the opposite of the tribal mind, which is all about words and rules and who's in and who's out.
Let's apply our formula one last time to that ultimate state of presence. The X input is his entire inner world, all of it integrated. The grief, the humor, the anti-tribal Jesus, the exhaustion with the old fight.
And the Y input is just the reality of the moment, the actual hands of the people next to you, the campfire, the inescapable facts of life.
And the resulting Z is presence, surrendered, non-judgmental connection.
It's the evolution from identity to intimacy.
Yes. When all the labels fall away, ex-Mormon, ex-Mormon, what's left is just the pure ability to connect with this moment. Presence is the doorway into the next stage of spirituality, where certainty gets replaced by wonder and striving gets replaced by acceptance.
So let's pull back and look at his whole essay as this complete case study. Why is this mix of his humor, his contradictions, his insights, why is that the perfect expression?
Because the essay itself is the perfect Z. It's what emerged from the unique meeting of his X, his singular history, his wiring, his wit, and his why, his age, his life as a parent, his changing world. It is exactly the shape that should have come from those inputs.
And we have to say it again for anyone listening who feels like they're in a confusing or struggling place. Perfection doesn't mean neat. It doesn't mean painless.
It means accurate. It means it could not have been any other way. Every twist in his story is the inevitable result of his internal needs meeting his external reality. There's nothing there to judge.
So what does this tell us about what healing actually is?
This essay gives us a working definition of healing. Healing isn't arriving at some final destination. It's the process of watching your lived Z constantly evolve. Because your X, your inner self, your self-knowledge has grown, and your Y, your world has shifted. That constant evolution is maturity. It's consciousness expanding.
Which brings us to the final point then. We're always told we have to strive for perfection. But based on this framework, why is the listener, right now, just as he is, perfect?
Because every single part of him, the conflicting desires, the moments of regret, the big insights, it all makes perfect sense. It all arose from conditions. It is the precise expression of his history meeting his current reality.
So the longing for magic is perfect, the grief is perfect, the anti-tribal Jesus is perfect, and the fear of losing his party trick is perfect.
All of it is Z, and Z is always the inevitable, complete, and precise expression of X meeting Y. It's an invitation to just surrender the need to judge and just embrace the story as it unfolds. And the listener, he gave us the conclusion himself. We can only discover the unknown by allowing the known an honorable death.
That honorable death. That's the identity fading, the party trick becoming obsolete, the conversation getting tired. That's not an ending. It's the beginning of a post-tribal life, of real presence. It's letting go into whatever comes next.
So identity dissolution is scheduled, humor is adaptive regulation, longing is magic, aging is dopamine optimizing, and presence, that beautiful Toy Story moment, is the final form of perfection.
So maybe that's what it means to be infants on thrones.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.